y'all coming today, would you keep standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to turn it over to Commissioner Presley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm proud to be joined via speakerphone this morning with Bishop David Tipton, who is the Bishop of the Pentecostal Church of Mississippi, good friend of mine. I know a good friend of a lot of people here at the commission. He's joining us from St. Louis, Missouri this morning, and I just would like to note this. Brother Tipton and I talked about it last week. The first ever founded United Pentecostal Church in the state of Mississippi is in my hometown, another, Brother G.H. Hill. And so the historical center on the grounds of the campground named in Brother Hill's honor. Brother Tipton, we got you on and ready for you to offer the prayer.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Presley, for the invitation to be here. I give honor to both Commissioner Maxwell and Bailey, and thank you for the good job you're doing. So we'll go to prayer. Lord, we humbly come into your presence this morning. Before the cares of the world consume our thoughts and the pressures of public service fall on our shoulders, we come together in unity to seek your wisdom and your direction. Grant the leaders in this call to the power to do your will and the grace to bear the burden of responsibility that leadership brings. Provide each commissioner today with the strength that is equal to the weight of his office and the wisdom to lead in the direction your spirit leads. Let your love fill their hearts and your will be demonstrated in their actions. I lift up in prayer each commissioner and ask that you give them the strength that they represent the citizens of Mississippi. And let them be compassionate in their heart, clear in their mind, and turn to you for wisdom and direction. In that spirit, to be united, to turn to the great task before us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Brother Tipton.
All right. All right. Good to have everybody join us today. We're going to get started on the consent agenda. Number one, adoption of proposed consent docket for March 2022 meeting of the commission.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, next is the energy agenda. Number one, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed order in docket number 2018 UN 205, Entergy Mississippi EML Vegetation Management. Mr. Mabry.
Thank you, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, on February 1st, Entergy filed the annual update to Vegetation Management Rider Schedule, VM1. The VM1 schedule was established by Commission order in December of 2019 to recover Entergy's vegetation management, operation, and management costs. In 2021, EML trimmed 89.2 miles of vegetation near transmission lines and 3,687 miles of vegetation near distribution lines. For 2022, Entergy has budgeted an overall level of planning spending for vegetation management similar to that of 2021, with an estimated $19 million spent on distribution vegetation and an estimated $4 million spent on transmission vegetation. The proposed residential factor will decrease from 0.002485 per kilowatt hours to 0.002062 per kilowatt hours. This will decrease 1,000 kilowatt hour residential customers' bill by approximately 43 cents per month. Factor decrease is due to a smaller under recovery than the previous year. Last year's rate included a larger under recovery because it included the 2021 cost and the recovery of the remainder of the 2020 cost. The 2022 redetermination includes the under recovery for just one prior year. Staff has reviewed the following along with its supporting documentation and verified that the filing is in compliance with the approved VM1 rider schedule. Staff recommends approval.
All right, do I have a motion? Any questions?
I got one question.
Okay, go ahead.
Appropriate time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mabry, when looking at what we're doing on vegetation management in conjunction with the Dale Soul report that came out not long ago, you may not can answer this, but I would just like for y'all to go back and look and maybe come with us an answer in the regular April meeting. And the real question is, are we doing enough in this area? And I don't expect you to have an answer for that today. But if we could come back in April and look at that, and in conjunction with that Dale Soul report, for my taste, that report was very lacking on any specifics. So if you can find a specific in that report and try to marry that with what we're doing and come back, I think it would provide some value to that report and give us something actually to take some action on. And again, I don't expect y'all to do that by our meeting next week, but if you could take the next month, Ms. Kruger, you and whoever y'all think, I think that would be helpful. If there are specific recommendations and whether or not we're meeting the benchmarks we need to be meeting in this particular area. And I know that's a little bit of a task, so we're, as far as my staff's concerned, more than glad to try to provide anything we can help with, but I'd like to have y'all's eyes on that if you could. That's all I got, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I guess just sort of a follow-up to that, and he's right, there is, the recent report did identify vegetation management key area to maintain and build on reliability, and having that confidence in the consumers that the power's all going to be on when they turn on. Just want to reiterate that even though this is a rate decrease for this component, which nobody's opposed to a rate decrease, certainly want to emphasize that we're not removing workers or construction crews or taking trucks off the road, that this is really a true up in the mathematical recovery process of this rate, and not a reduction in the workforce and what's going to be done out there on the ground. That's correct?
That is correct. It is actually a slight increase in spending for 2022.
Right.
For what it's worth.
Yeah.
But yes, it's just as you said, a true up. And Commissioner, we will do the research and get back to you with.
And if that's not enough time, I'm not
Absolutely.
trying to put a hard deadline out there. I know y'all got other things, and we do too, but if I could just get on your radar and we could look at it in the next 30 or 45 days, that'd be great.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
I move we approve.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, next is administrative agenda. There's no items on the telecommunication or water agenda, so number one is discussion and possible action regarding approval of commission minutes from February 2022 term of the commission.
Move we approve.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. And we're on to number two, is a discussion and possible action regarding proposed order in docket number 2021 UA 138, joint petition of Cooperative Energy and Southern Pine Electric Cooperative. Order referral, Mr. Hammonds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we use an order referring this to Commissioner Bailey for hearing, it's a transmission substation facilities in Rankin County.
Okay. Any questions?
Move we approve.
I second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, number three is discussion and possible action regarding the proposed order in docket number 2021 UA 176, petition by Entergy Mississippi LLC. Order referral, Mr. Hammonds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for upgrading some transmission facilities in DeSoto County. This is an order referring it to Commissioner Presley for hearing.
Motion approved.
Second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Now, I understand we're going to take up 4 and 5 together. So, item 4, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed orders in docket number 2022 UN-4 and 2022 UN-5, Town of Flora, orders for referral, Mr. Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is two petitions made by Town of Flora for an adjustment in rates to water and sewer service outside the 1 mile corridor. This is referring it to Commissioner Bailey for hearing.
I move we approve 4 and 5.
I second that, so all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, number 6, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed order docket number 2008 UA 359 Network Innovations Incorporated, order canceling certificate of public convenience and necessity. Ms. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This order is canceling the certificate of public convenience and necessity in this docket. The matter is properly before the commission. Network Innovations obtained a CPCN from the commission to provide resold inter-exchange telecommunications services in the state of Mississippi on March 31st, 2008. On November 5th, 2001, Network Innovations filed with the commission an informal application for the cancellation of its certificate issued in this docket. By requesting the cancellation of the CPCN, Network Innovations voluntarily waives its right to a hearing under 77-321. Due and proper notice of the filing has been given in the manner and for the time prescribed by law. No protest, objection, or intervention has been filed in the docket. Network Innovations has no customers in the state of Mississippi, and the cancellation is in the best interest of the public. So based on the information in the record, the commission should enter this order canceling the CPCN issued in this docket to Network Innovations.
All right, any questions?
No question. I move we approve.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, number 7, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed order in docket number 2016 UA 063, Mobility Management LLC, order canceling certificate of public convenience and necessity. Ms. Taylor? Did I say that right? The second time?
The first time I saw it, I was like, what is that? Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the same kind of order. It cancels the certificate of public convenience and necessity issued to Mobility Management LLC in this docket. The matter is properly before the commission. Mobility obtained a CPCN from the commission for facility-based and resold local exchange telecommunication services in the state of Mississippi on August 17th, 2017. On August 31st, 2021, they filed with the commission an application for the cancellation of their CPCN. By requesting the cancellation, Mobility's voluntarily waived its right to a hearing under 77-321. Due and proper notice, the filing was given, and there was no protest, objection, or intervention filed in the docket. Mobility has no customers in the state of Mississippi, and cancellation of the CPCN is in the best interest of the public. Based on the information in the record, the commission should cancel the CPCN issued in this docket requested by Mobility Management.
Is there any questions?
No, I move we approve.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, Mr. Hammonds, you're at,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one more matter to put before the commission. On February 9th, the commission issued a request for proposal from qualified engineering and economic consultants to assist the commission in efforts contemplated pursuant to 77-1-55. As outlined in the RFP, those proposals are due today, March 1st. Before you right now is a request from commission legal staff to authorize the formation of a selection committee to be comprised of one representative from each office, David Carr and myself, to review and select a qualified consulting firm for the services contemplated in the RFP, and for further authorization for the commission's executive secretary to enter into a contract with said consulting firm once the selection has been made.
okay. Questions?
I move we approve, and just want to say thank you for taking that route on this. I know we've done that same in the past on fuel audits, and I move we approve.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. All right, so I've got a statement I want to make to basically put this on the record. Since it's a statement and it's going out to the world, which will probably be in the press, I'm going to read from this, which is typically not how I operate. But I want to say this, and if you will, just bear with me. If y'all have any desire later to get a copy of this, it'll be available in my office. As many of you know, I'm a former active duty Marine, and as a Marine, it was my job to protect against physical attacks. That was my former job, but as you know, I will always be a Marine. In my current job, it is my business to protect against attacks, not only physical in nature, but also silent and covert assaults such as cyber attacks. It is no secret to anyone in this room that Russia preceded the attacks on Ukraine with cyber attacks. Now, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency a federal agency that seeks to improve cybersecurity readiness, has issued shields up warnings urging organizations to reduce their chances of cyber attack and ensure they are prepared for a breach in our homeland. The threat for cyber intrusions from Russia is becoming more of a possibility for local organizations and businesses. This is not the only source calling out for caution. North Carolina State cyber warfare expert Jack Shanahan said the attacks could be as minimal as denial of service attacks, but could grow significant enough to impact our country's most significant critical infrastructure, like financial networks, transportation networks, energy systems, and energy networks. According to the U.S. Department of Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, enemies of the United States have the capability to shut down the U.S. power grid, and there are very malign actors trying even as we speak. As grid modernization progresses, opportunities for malicious conduct increases. But the energy grid is not the only vulnerable asset related to utility infrastructure. Last year, hackers took down the largest fuel pipeline in the United States, owned by Colonial Pipeline Company, causing fuel shortages across the East Coast. Experts also have concerns about the vulnerability of water and wastewater systems. In October of 2020, Governor Tate Reeves signed his first Executive Order 1456, which created a task force on state cybersecurity. The task force is led by Attorney General Lynn Fitch, and its members were appointed by the governor. The task force is directed and empowered to primarily focus on the needs and protections of state agencies. Both Governor Reeves and Attorney General Fitch are to be commended for their efforts to protect Mississippi from cyber events. At the Mississippi Public Service Commission, we are charged to do more. We must focus our efforts on mitigation of risks and vulnerabilities as they apply to the electric grid and natural gas pipelines, also the regulated critical infrastructure. We must do all we can to ensure reliability for Mississippians. While state commissioners have not historically regulated or established rules on procedures in this area, many now are focusing their attention on vulnerabilities in public utility infrastructure and are working to identify cybersecurity measures that would most effectively mitigate such vulnerabilities and risk. Urgent priorities include strengthening existing protections for the generation and distribution systems, as well as the overall power systems, natural gas systems, and other regulated infrastructure, enhancing coordination at all levels and accelerating the development of robust protocols for response and recovery in the event of a successful attack. It is for these reasons that in the coming weeks, I will be sitting down with my colleagues to discuss how best to proceed to adequately protect Mississippians from outside cyber attacks on our critical infrastructure. We do not know when an event might occur. We do know that there is bad actors out there, and the result of an attack can be catastrophic. Thank you, and I will have copies of this available.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you for that statement. I think everything you said is very important. And in that vein, we have had at the commission in previous term a working group on cybersecurity that I hope we can leave here today with the chairman's directions in his statement and put that group back on the table. I know that we had lots of changes over both at the public utility staff and within the commission staff, but it seems to be the most appropriate of times to revive that. And I would just like to ask our utilities, again, in furtherance of what the chairman said, to prepare to give the commissioners individual confidential briefings between now and next week as the chairman's working to do his work, that y'all figure out a time in which to sit down with us confidentially and walk through, and I understand many of these things are issues of national security and things in which we have to walk through very carefully, recognizing that going into it. But that we get a full and robust confidential briefing as best as possible. Mr. Hammonds, if the Open Meetings Act allows for an executive session where we all hear it at one time, obviously that would be the preferred way in which to do that without ever running close or afoul to the Open Meetings Act. But I would like to make that request in furtherance of what the chairman brought up this morning so that we don't waste 7 days. We actually start getting those briefings. And the last thing I want to mention, and I want to make a request While I know that it's heavily unlikely that any of our regulated utilities have either directly or indirectly or through their parent company any transactions or ties with Russia during this time, I would ask that every one of our regulated utilities, particularly those of you in the electric power and natural gas sector, we come back to meet here on March the 8th. And that if need be, that be filed confidential, that you explain to the commission what those ties are and what your plans are to sever them in reaction to what we're seeing around the world, and knowing that the threats that poses not only to the United States as a whole, but to a state like Mississippi. Many of you are heavily reliant upon natural gas. We know that natural gas is exported at times to the, we want to know what that looks like and whether those, or I do, and I think the whole commission does, what those ties look like in a very clear direction, and what steps you're taking to sever those, and what steps on mitigation that you're taking in the period ahead. This request comes in the same vein as you read in the paper last week that the Lieutenant Governor spoke about the state of Mississippi severing all ties in business relationships with Russia, whether that be in vodka, whether that be in the public employees retirement system investment, whether it be buying paper clips or pencils. How in which we take a stand in this very critical time around the world. And it's incumbent upon regulated utilities that have a monopoly status to make these type of determinations and come back and report those to us. And you've got a week to do it. That shouldn't be too much of a lift, and we'd ask that you have that ready for us by March 8th. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Last,
So much, yeah. I mean, certainly, our thoughts and prayers for the folks on the other side of the world in Ukraine dealing with that, and I appreciate y'all's statements.
good. I know that there's some nuclear fuel that's purchased by some from Russia, so if you're in that business, that's something we're going to want to talk about. Let us know if there's any issues concerning such as that. And with that,
May I say one more thing? I just want to say thank you to our outside counsel at Brunini for the work that they've been doing on cybersecurity and the briefings that they've been pulling. I think it's very important, Mr. Hebert, that we continue to keep a very sharp pencil on what's going on at the FERC and at other federal agencies. And I didn't want to let this moment go without thanking them for their work on that.
yeah, we appreciate it. Is there any other business before the commission? If not, then we'll stand adjourned. We'll stand in recess, actually, for 5 minutes, and we'll reconvene it for the hearing that's on the agenda afterwards. Thank you for coming.
Got orders?
and reconvene. Before the commission is a public comment hearing in docket number 2021 AD 19, order establishing docket to review the efficiency and fairness of the net metering and interconnection rules. A sign-in sheet was provided at the back of the courtroom for parties have identified themselves as wishing to make comments on the record in this proceeding. To notify everyone who will be speaking of the commission's procedures for this hearing, parties are directed to keep their comments to 3 minutes. Before we get into the parties in this proceeding and their comments, is there anyone who has not intervened in this proceeding but wishes to provide a comment on record? Okay, seeing none, I will recognize Mr. Hammonds. Hold on.
Can I ask just one question before we go forward? Has the public utility staff intervened in this case? And y'all don't wish to make a statement? Okay, thank you.
You want to turn your mic on?
I haven't touched it. Can you hear me? Okay, so we had 7 interveners sign in. The order we're going to go in, Audubon Delta, Scenic Hills Solar, Sierra Club, Posigen, Sundial Solar Power, Entergy Mississippi, and Mississippi Power Company. So Audubon Delta, if y'all want to come up, just please state your name for the record and the entity who you're offering comments on behalf of.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Jill Mastro Totero, and I'm Audubon Delta's Mississippi Policy Director based in Ridgeland. And first, I would like to thank Chairman Maxwell and Commissioners Bailey and Presley for holding this public hearing today as part of your important work to update and finalize Mississippi's net metering and distributed generation rules, especially on behalf of our more than 9,500 Mississippi members and our nature centers in Holly Springs and Moss Point. Audubon Delta thanks the Commission for its leadership in prioritizing this rulemaking process. Since this is my first opportunity to speak before you, I wanted to share that Audubon Delta is the regional office for the National Audubon Society and includes Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. As one of our country's oldest conservation nonprofits, Audubon has had a regional presence for over a century, and we are deeply invested in efforts that benefit birds and people, including through the development of solar and other renewable energy policy. Audubon believes this rulemaking is a key step for Mississippi to be set on a strong path to successfully grow the state's renewable energy future, a future that benefits not only Mississippi electric customers and utilities, but also promotes economic development and supports a healthier world for our children and grandchildren. The Mississippi legislature, in its wisdom, gave the PSC full authority to pursue and support economic development. And we believe now is the time for the Commission to fully embrace this role by adopting a robust net metering policy, which will send a clear message that Mississippi is open for solar business. We believe the currently proposed draft rules and order would still leave Mississippi well behind and place renewable energy development at an economic disadvantage. Therefore, we respectfully urge the Commission to take full advantage of this rulemaking to incorporate the recommendations that we have made in our joint comments and the additional supporting documents that we have submitted. By removing regulatory burdens and reducing administrative obstacles so that Mississippi homeowners, businesses, and the commercial sector are incentivized to install solar, our state can address and overcome the challenges that have emerged since the original rules were proposed and adopted in 2015. As we've come to learn the past 7+ years, our state needs a stronger, more durable solar rule to secure a bigger part of the regional market share, increase confidence in the technological friendliness of Mississippi's economy, attract supply chain investment and a modern workforce, gain more federal grant funding and tax credit dollars, and avoid excessive and unnecessary utility spending. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you today and for considering our recommendations. We encourage the Commission to meet the moment of this extraordinary opportunity by adopting comprehensive rules that will deliver a win-win-win for all Mississippians, our economy, and the environment. We stand ready to support you in this endeavor.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Scenic Hill Solar, Mr. Jason Keys.
Good morning, I'm Jason Keys with the law firm of Keys and Fox. I'm actually representing two clients in this docket. So first up is Scenic Hill Solar, which is an Arkansas-based developer of commercial systems. So in Arkansas, Scenic Hill has developed more than a dozen systems that are larger than a megawatt for cities and water districts and school districts. And in our comments last year, we recommended two important changes to the rule. One is to allow meter aggregation, and another is to allow power purchase agreements so that governmental entities and schools can access the federal tax credits. So we think it's fantastic that you've enabled that in your Solar for Schools program. With that said, there are a few stumbling blocks, and we'd like to address those. The first is that the non-quantifiable benefits adder is still set at 2.5 cents. And just to keep up with inflation, we recommend having that go up to 3 cents. But on the side of changes that can be made that don't cost anything, by far the most important one is that the meter aggregation rule says that all systems being aggregated have to be within 1 mile of the facility. So that will actually kill the Solar for Schools program, and there's no need for it. You don't need to have a 1 mile restriction. So to explain why, first, if you put solar on the ground, it's a lot cheaper than putting it on a roof. And also, roofs, if you're gonna put it on a roof, it's gotta be a new roof. Otherwise, you're gonna have to take the solar down and replace the roof at some point in the lifetime of the system. So that limits your options for rooftop. Also, it's a lot easier to build a single 3 megawatt facility than it is to build 10 300 kilowatt facilities. But a 3 megawatt facility takes on the order of 15 to 20 acres. A school roof is not that big. You can only put a few hundred kilowatts under a school roof. And also, in your typical school district, schools are spread out. They're near where the kids are. So for instance, in the Jackson School District, it's about 100 square miles. There's 39 elementary schools, there's 13 middle schools, and there's 7 high schools. And they're spread all over. There isn't any one place where you can put a solar array that can aggregate more than 3 of those schools within a mile. And if they're close together, it's in a heavily populated area. So there isn't 15 to 20 spare acres in the area. So we recommend that you establish a rule as build a 3 megawatt facility any place in the school district. And there are vacant places in Jackson School District, for instance. And it shouldn't have to be right next to a school. There isn't necessarily vacant land right next to the school, but there is someplace in the school district. And finally, our other recommendation is to expand this from solar for schools to solar for government entities. Government entities are in the same boat as school districts. They can't access the tax credits. There's a big public benefit to supporting them. So please expand the program to cover not just schools, but also cities and water districts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have Sierra Club, Mr. Weigel.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Robert Weigel. I'm here on behalf of the Sierra Club. I had the opportunity to be before this commission on behalf of the Sierra Club fairly often. We appreciate it again today, and I want to say we appreciate what the commission is trying to do. We know that you are trying to enable customer choice. We know that you're trying to do it in a responsible way, and you're trying to develop a market and move the state of Mississippi along toward a sustainable energy future. We appreciate that. With that said, I will tell you what we've been hearing about this rule is that there are things that are going to need to change to make it successful. And believe me, the citizens of Mississippi and the Sierra Club, they not just want the commission to be successful, we need the commission to be successful on this. The first is this: what we have been hearing from the wisdom of the market, which is the folks who actually install these systems and do this work in other places, is that reasonable investment timeline that will both get companies to come into the state and will get folks to adopt these systems is something on the 10 to 12-year range. And you have in other comments from folks in industry seen that the current structure that's proposed in the rule does not meet that. Now, there are several paths that would get to that point, right? There's the simple retail net metering concept, in which power that you send back to the grid, the way they put it often, runs the meter backwards, right? That works, but there's also the market transition credit kind of approach of the type that the commission has proposed for the lower and middle income bracket. Now, for that to actually work, and this is not according to the Sierra Club or Robert Weigel, it's according to the folks in the industry that we're listening to and what they tell us this market will do. We need to extend that to a larger slice of customers, and we need to have a larger market transition credit. Now, along with that, I'll note in the lower and middle income category, there's a cap on the size of the system that would be eligible for that. What we've heard consistently is that for air conditioning and other reasons, the systems that are installed in Mississippi, I can tell you this myself, being the owner of one, these need to be larger than that, 8 to 10 kilowatts as a standard system. Now, so that needs to happen, and there are paths for the commission to get there, but it is going to require going to a higher compensation rate, or it's going to require going to a larger market transition credit. The second thing that we're hearing is that folks want certainty, and we commend the commission for putting in this proposed rule that there will be certainty as to, does that mean that my time is up, or does
Yes.
it mean that I need to speed up?
Means your time's up. You can take a minute and a few minutes and finish
Sure.
wrapping it up.
Let me just point out this. I think that a lot of the commission's concern, from what I'm reading, and I get this, is cost shifting. And the commission has left itself in a position to deal with that issue in this rule. You've got a mechanism where our publicly owned utilities can come back in if these systems get to 3% of peak load, and they can ask to have this looked at, and that's at a level there is no evidence in this record, certainly, that below that there's any significant cost shifting. And in terms of the market transition credits, you have a cap on that as well. The commission is going to remain in full control of this, regardless of the compensation rate that you choose.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Posgen, Mr. Keys.
And I'm back. Posgen is serving the other end of the market. They serve low and moderate income households. They're Louisiana-based. They've installed systems on thousands of LMI customers' homes in Louisiana. Their model is to lease the system to the LMI customer. So by owning the system, Posgen is able to monetize the tax credits, monetize the depreciation, and thereby offer leases at rates that are lower than what the customers would have paid their utilities. So they've got thousands of people signed up. The numbers have to work based on the incentives that are available. And the numbers work in Louisiana. Under the existing rules in Mississippi, the payback is somewhere in the 20-year range. And that doesn't work. Posgen applauds the commission for all the positive changes and certainty that you've added into the rules. And it gets the payback to 15 to 20 years, which is better, but probably not enough to entice Posgen into the market. So we have one monetary recommendation, that instead of having a $3,000 incentive for upfront incentive for LMI customers, you do $1,000 per kilowatt for LMI customers. So a 3-kilowatt system would get $3,000. A 6-kilowatt system would get $6,000. If you do that, the 6-kilowatt systems are going to come in at more like a 12 to 15-year payback, and that's getting really close to enticing. Beyond that, there's several recommendations for changes that don't cost you anything. The first is to have transferability of that upfront payment. If you're giving a $3,000 incentive check to the customer, Posgen can't count on the customer to then sign the check over to Posgen. And so you don't get the check until you install the system and the customer may get $3,000 and decide that he or she has better things they can do with $3,000. So you need to be able to transfer that over to the installer or developer. Second, Mr. Weigel referred to the 6 kilowatt limitation is too low. Systems often need to be 7 or 8 kilowatts. If it's an all-electric home, lots of air conditioning, you're talking 10 or 12 kilowatts. So there's no particular reason to limit it there. And you get economies of scale with larger systems. So Posigen can lease the systems for less per kilowatt if it's a larger system. And third is the administrator for the program is now listed as Catholic Charities with no contact information, no web presence about solar, and they haven't been involved in this docket at all. And don't see a reason for them to be named as the administrator. Be happy to have the utility as the administrator. That's typically who would administer a program like this, or it could be a government entity. I'm sure Catholic Charities does wonderful work, but they're not a natural fit for the administrator of this program. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Sundial Solar, Mr. Shirley.
Thank you, commissioners and others. I'd like to bring forth to the commission a different perspective on this industry in Mississippi, the solar industry in Mississippi. Our company, Sundial Solar Power Developers, started in 2009. We are charter members of the Gulf States Renewable Energy Industries Association. And lately I've been voted to be the vice president of the National Association of Blacks in Solar. Going back to 2009 to 2022, the market in Mississippi has changed very little. The economic development prospects around solar power has not been realized in this state. Even from a standpoint of one company's growth and ability to hire and expand, those assets were not, and is not available to us today. That leaves me in a position to ask the questions why. Okay, so we pretty much know what's on the table. We know that this state needs to expand its solar market. We know that, I know personally, that thousands of people want to come into the industry in this state. So the ability for economic growth and prosperity based on solar is just not there. Way back in grad school, I wrote a thesis called Solar-Based Economic Development. And it had to do with the constructs of economic development as related to solar technology. The whole basis of that was to lay out a platform where people who read that thesis could get a good idea of the indicators that would lead a state, a city, a municipality, a county that does not have great industry or great businesses, but it would guide those entities to assist people in pursuing a career in solar. So I know that the council knows all of the ins and outs of the policy decisions that need to happen. I urge you, for the sake of people wanting to come into this industry in Mississippi as holders of careers and jobs, please do your duty, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is Entergy Mississippi.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tiana Raby, and I represent Entergy Mississippi. And first, Commissioners, and to your respective staffs, we want to thank you for the deliberative and thoughtful process that you've undertaken in evaluating this rule. We truly appreciate it, and the opportunity to speak before you today. One thing that I want to share with the Commission, based on some of the various positions that we've heard, is that there is a concern at all times with cost. And although Entergy Mississippi supports the Commission's rule, we've not opposed any particular aspect of the rule. What we have done is ask that the Commission balance the opportunity for access with making sure those costs are fair for everyone. And so when you look at costs and when you think about what costs are, every aspect of this rule has a potential cost. When you look at meter aggregation, there's a potential cost. Whether you have a cap and how you administer that cap and evaluate the potential operational or cost impacts of that, that has a cost. And so what we're asking is that the Commission just balance those fairly. I'll just highlight two things that we have in our comments. Of course, we file comments and you can look at those in more detail. But we are asking the Commission to reconsider or consider the idea of the 3% cap being an automatic pause. We're not asking for it to be a suspension of the program, but just something that allows us as the utility and the Commission to reasonably be able to have a no regrets approach and evaluate what operational challenges there may be, what planning that needs to take place, and then also what cost impacts there are for whatever peak or whatever capacity we are operating at that time. And so we think that automatic pause is appropriate because the practical realities are that if that does not take place, you may incur those inappropriate costs that cause harm to non-participating customers or system planning issues without being able to retract that or go back with that. And so once again, not a suspension, just a pause for evaluation purposes. And finally, when we look at the issue of the DC versus AC, we're asking that for consumer protection and thinking about how the industry generally reports on these types of systems, that you maintain that nameplate DC application so that customers are able to best evaluate the size of the facilities that they're getting and evaluate the costs. And, they're not the experts, they're not the sophisticated users that we are or the utilities are. And we think maintaining that as a way of designating these facilities is appropriate.
Last, Mississippi Power Company.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission. My name is Ricky Cox. I'm with the law firm of Balch & Bingham in Gulfport, Mississippi, representing Mississippi Power Company. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today and all the efforts that's been put forth by the Commission with respect to this rule. Happy Mardi Gras to everybody. I wish I was parading, but I ain't here.
Yeah, you ain't the only one.
Mississippi Power Company has participated at every stage of this docket, going all the way back to the original docket, and so we filed several comments. You are well aware of the positions that we filed. We actually submitted, at the Commission's request, a red line of the proposed rule, and so you've got the recommendations that the company's made. I'd like to focus on a couple things and highlight what we raised in our post-order comments. The Commission's philosophy in this entire rulemaking has been to balance the interests of the participants and the non-participants and avoid unnecessary cost shifting. I mean, we've heard a lot of folks talk about that today. In our red line rule, we proposed some new customer safeguard provisions in a new Chapter 8 that I'd like to just highlight. One of those measures would be to provide, to require an energy audit to be performed as a prerequisite to submitting an interconnection request. We believe that would allow the customers, the potential customers, to have additional information regarding the benefits of energy efficiency versus the benefits of distributed generation facilities, and make a fully informed decision about kind of what's the best bang for the buck, if you will. Another important measure would be to require the developers, solar developers, to file their marketing materials with the commission, not seeking commission approval of them, but just file them so that they are on record and everybody can see what the marketing materials look like that are presented to prospective customers. Thirdly, and somewhat related to the second consumer protection measure, we believe the commission should consider standardizing the projections for future rate increases for electric utilities so that there is not speculative positions on future rate increases that could influence and really speculate on what future rate increases are for electric utilities and influence improperly the decisions to install or not install. And then finally, I think we share Entergy's position that one of the most effective customer protection measures is to reinstate the original 3% mandated cap that's in there regarding the total system peak demand. Having an uncapped market puts pressure on our system planning, and we believe, if unchecked, can exacerbate the cost shifting and the impacts on non-participants. So with those, I'll relinquish the rest of my time. I did not get buzzed. I'm proud of that.
Just did.
Yeah, you did.
But thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
That's everybody, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. All right, I'm gonna, we appreciate everybody for the comments, and then I'm gonna let Commissioner Presley make a statement.
Yeah, I'd just like to address something that I feel like needs to be addressed, and I think we got a little bit out of the way yesterday afternoon. But, and this is really a request to the staff more than anything else. The staff has not been, and y'all acknowledged earlier, a party to this case since it opened, and this has been going on well in excess of a year. But a couple of weeks ago, y'all filed comments related to a rate increase because of the fully costed customer charge. And I think yesterday acknowledged some inaccuracies in that, but the letter that I saw filed, in my mind, does not correct the inaccuracies of the statements that were put into the record. And it's my understanding that there have been other calculations that have been put since then. And what I would just ask is that the staff, I'm not trying to beat up on anybody about this, is just that we have a clear, concise, clear as to what you are saying related to these, because the figures, of course, that commission staff have provided for us, and I think what y'all have received in the last week, are more representative of the actual reflected rate decrease than any increase. And the characterization in the letter file yesterday says that essentially that it's not as much of an increase, when the facts are totally opposite of that related to the calculations that we have using regular methods of rate design. And so whatever steps we need to take to actually have a factual record on that, I just want to make that request to the staff that we do it. I appreciate the letter that was filed yesterday. I just don't think that that letter is reflective enough of it. And secondly, I'd just like to mention in this docket, one thing that I think is important, speaking again solely for myself, are the strongest measures that we can have on consumer protection. Some of y'all saw in social media, and I know that the solar providers that are here today are not of this ilk, but we saw just a couple of weeks ago folks popping up tents all over my district, handing out free tablets without telling them one cotton-picking thing about what they were getting. And as we move forward in this venture, the strongest consumer protections for good actors is wonderful to have. Not having strong consumer protections leave us in the opening to have analogous pop-up tents that take advantage of people and do not give them accurate information. Again, I want to say, I know the people that have testified here today are good actors. You shouldn't have a problem with that if you are a good actor as a solar developer. And I have listened to the utilities comments. I've listened to the other parties' comments on this. And I think we've got a lot of work to do, obviously, to try to work this out in a judicious way that makes sense for everybody. But I would like to point this out. I sat on this bench in 2010 when we were proposing spending $2 billion on a clean coal plant in which this room was packed out related to it. And in this case, we're talking about, at least in the proposed rule, and it may not end up this way, we're talking about a $5 million and a $10 million investment. And all the wailing and gnashing of teeth on that sounds pretty strange coming from the same mouths that lined up at the podium to support what ended up being a $7 billion boondoggle. So as we go forward in this proceeding, it's very important to me that we be judicious, that we be measured, that we look at everybody's sides of comments on this, that we beef up things that make sense. But let's all try to remember also that when we see certain projects come before us, that we have to weigh those out in many ways and many different calculations. And I just want to say this, and I'll shut up. I really appreciate the work with Commissioner Maxwell and Commissioner Bailey, trying to find common ground and things in which we've tried to work together on, and I know we'll carry on that spirit of cooperation, and I just want to thank you gentlemen for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything?
I just add up, I want to thank everybody for their participation and contributions today. We've certainly come a long way in the last year through various iterations of this rule, and I know there's still additional changes and improvements that can be made based on the comments here. And just to remind folks, you know, the participation opportunity doesn't just end with this docket right here. We've also gone steps to open another docket, the community solar docket, to allow participation by others that may not have direct access to ownership or the various ownership profiles or opportunities or non-ownership of certain homes, to allow even broader participation and opportunities in these clean energy future that looks like that's where Mississippi is, as well as many other states, are shifting to. But with that, just want to, again, look forward to working with colleagues here, staff, of course, interveners and others, as we continue to fine-tune this document, this rule, and as mentioned, hopefully create opportunities and, again, support economic development, education, and retaining those bright minds out here in the state, with this just being one small part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just add that I appreciate you guys coming out today and giving us your comments, as well as very much appreciate the staff and all that y'all have done, and attorneys and Ross and Catherine, you guys have done a great job. And we'll continue to work on this. Having said that, the commission will take that under advisement. Do I have an motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying